definitely Gallon being who he is. But I've been told by many different people who spar him, all that sort of stuff, that he just doesn't have the heavyweight power. Like I've got it, no matter what. I've got the power. Whether I've got the rest of the skills and everything else, different story. But I've got the power to knock you out. And it's the same as Wilder is a classic example. He's one of the shittest boxers I've ever seen. He can punch. He can punch, and that's all he needs. He was losing that entire fight to Ortiz, and then all of a sudden, bang, fight's over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Deontay Wilder against Fury, he was always behind, and you knew it. But if he threw 3 punches, you started to believe in him again. Like, oh, this.
That's right.
But
where Fury doesn't have the biggest power either, but because he's also 6'9" and can move, it makes a difference. Yeah.
Fury's very sharp. But on today's show, we've got Lucas Brown, former ex-MMA heavyweight champion and WBA heavyweight champion. He's fought the likes of Daniel Cormier, Roslan Chagav, Paul Gallen. Welcome to the show, Lucas.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, boys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
And actually, I was just wondering, is it Lucas or Luke?
Lucas, yeah.
Lucas, perfect. But
I think it was originally supposed to be Luke, but because my last name's Brown, like Luke Brown didn't flow as well as Lucas Brown. So it's just Lucas, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, well, I'm Luke, and Dad wanted to spell me Luc. Like, what chance would I have?
That's just lazy. Yeah, that's just lazy.
Set you up for failure with a name like that. That's
could he not spell Luke?
I don't know. Mum must have taught him, because I'm thankful for that's not that spell.
Well done, yeah, beautiful.
But you started off in juniors playing rugby league, by the sounds of it, and then transition.
I was an extremely athletic child. I was bigger than everyone, but like more height wise. I wasn't thicker at that stage. I was playing. Okay, so I played Harold Matthews, SG Ball, and that was for 2 years, and that was because all that stuff was coming up with the Super League and all that sort of stuff, and they changed the year groups for a bit. But like at 16, I was 100 kilos, 6'4", playing on the wing. So that gives you an indication of what I was like, you know what I mean? So I wasn't the quickest person there, but I was definitely fast, you know? So it was more like an Eric Growth Jr. That's what I looked like. And I could do anything. I played state baseball, state athletics, state basketball, state soccer, and Parramatta footy. So like, it was just that I could do anything. I literally
You were that guy. You were that guy in school.
I was. I really was, yeah. I wasn't the studious one, that's for sure. So I was that guy, and there was obviously many years where I got married at 19. I had my first child at 19, all the rest of it. So that everything just took a break. So I just worked my ass off for the next whatever many years. And it wasn't until my ex-wife and I broke up just before I was 30, and they moved to Perth. So we're all from Sydney. They moved to Perth. And I was basically sitting there going, okay, what do I do now? Like all this time that I normally spend on either picking kids up and cooking and this, that, and the other, I'm sitting there going, now what? You know, so I thought I'll give it a go and see what happens. And here we are, you know.
Out of all those sports, though, like you weren't a high school champion at boxing or any MMA. It was basketball, baseball. How come? Yeah. How come you weren't fighting?
Yeah, what drew you to the fighting?
Were you fighting in school? Were you fighting in school?
Yeah, I always thought.
Yeah.
And I did 13 years of security, like as a bouncer as well. So that was sort of my on-the-job training. That was my amateurs, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was never a bully, but I was always the one that if I had a reason to, I'd finish it, you know what I mean? So especially, obviously, if someone punches you in the face, well, that's their fault. So I've always been a very violent sort of style person. I got too big and too violent for soccer, got too big and too violent for footy. So I thought, natural progression. Let's start punching people for real, so and get paid for it.
So, but you went into ex-MMA first.
Yeah,
or you started with the martial codes.
Yeah, it was CFC and ex-MMA. They were the two competitions. CFC was quite big back then. We were fighting out of Luna Park and all that sort of stuff. Was really good. But I think the defining moment for me was the Cormier fight, because if I wanted to be anything in particular, you have to sort of go overseas, and America's the spot. And they're all wrestlers, and I'm not. You know, I kicked twice in one fight out of my 8 MMA fights. Like I don't kick, I don't wrestle, I just like punching. So it was just a natural progression for me to actually go to boxing rather than MMA.
Did anyone tell you that if you can't kick and you can't wrestle, like MMA is a bad idea? Like I don't know, like if you can punch, just do boxing.
Because I kept knocking people out, so no one really cared. Yeah. But you look at someone like this is obviously back in the day as well. So someone like a Chuck Liddell was the man at that time. And yes, he had a wrestling background, but it was more a defensive style. Like he didn't actually wrestle. He didn't get on the ground at all. So it was all punches. So from my point of view, that was sort of me, and that was how I did it. But I wasn't very good at the takedowns when it comes from a 2-time Olympic champion, you know?
Yes, and that was Daniel Cormier's first fight against you, was it? His first professional fight coming out of the Olympics?
No, that was his third fight. He'd had 2 Strikeforce fights, so he wasn't quite in UFC yet. And yeah, obviously it's an Australian version of a heavyweight title, so it wasn't, I don't know if you want to call it not really a heavyweight title, but it certainly was. And yeah, that was his first sort of opening to everything as well. So he had those 2 fights in Strikeforce first and sort of half got his name out there and then beat me and then away he went.
And was it at that moment after the Cormier fight that you went, I'm not going to do MMA? Like, what was that thought process like? Because I can't imagine that would be what you jumped to straight after a fight.
In my head it was, just from a pure wrestling aspect. Like, I'm an extremely strong person. But I was outmatched like you would not believe. And just because of the technique, and obviously I think wrestling strength is very different to having normal strength. I trained a few times in Sydney, and one of the older fellas, he was probably 64, something like that, I think he was, and he out-wrestled me completely. And I'm like, how's this 64-year-old out-wrestled? It's just a different strength, a different cardio, a different everything. And the Cormier one really hit home for me. I had 2 fights after that. One was a win, and the last one was a loss, and it was to a wrestler again. So I'm like, yeah, okay, that's it. I'm done. Yeah.
And when you fought Cormier, did you know he was that guy, or was that still?
No.
Was there anything that gave it away that was like, to lose to Daniel Cormier doesn't sound that bad at all?
Doesn't now,
yeah. That's right. It certainly doesn't now. That's for sure. Yeah. I was actually supposed to fight his fellow gym mate, Mike Kyle. Now, Mike Kyle had fought Strikeforce, UFC, stuff like that. He was a 6'4" stand-up fighter. So I'd prepared for like 2 months, just over 2 months, whatever it was, for a 6'4" stand-up fighter. And he pulled out like 3 days before the fight. And they said, we've got someone else for you. And I'm like, okay, like it's just going to happen. Otherwise, all these people that have bought tickets and all the promotion, and there's still a fight for a world title, regardless of anything else. So we had a quick look at him, obviously, and he only had the 2 Strikeforce fights at the time. But like, yeah, wrestling pedigree, Olympic, all that sort of stuff. I'm like, okay, we're in for trouble, but we should be okay. Like, he's not a striker, and he wasn't at that stage. So from my point of view, it was like, okay, I've got to try and keep him off and just do my thing and strike. It didn't work out that way, but you know, it is what it is. Yeah.
What are and you may not want to answer, but what are the pays like in the ex-MMA? Because we were watching the fight today of Usman and Covington, and I think Covington's walked away with 500K, give or take. I'm curious, especially like back 10 years ago when MMA wasn't what it is.
There's 2 sides to that. Like, 500 grand is a great payday, don't get me wrong. But you look at someone like Canelo, he would have got $30 million.
Exactly.
So because Dana White still has that monopoly over all the other MMA styles, because he's basically bought them out or sent them bankrupt, they've got no option. So unless you're one of the big boys, you aren't really getting anything. Now, when it comes to Australian sports, unless you're someone like a Tim Zhu who's already got a name, or you're a footballer like Paul Gallen, you get absolutely fuck all. Like, my next fight that I'm fighting in 3 weeks is $5 grand.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So that's, wow, indeed. So I got 100 grand for Paul Gallen fight. He got $1.2 million. So that shows you, he's the former world champion, the only ever Australian heavyweight champion, and I get 100 grand as opposed to 1.2 mil from a footballer. So most of my fights in Australia, besides the Gallon fight, every other fight I've ever had in Australia, MMA or boxing, have been all under 25 grand, 90% under 10 grand. So that gives you an indication of how shit I get paid, yeah.
Wow. So what do you say to the 18-year-old boxer right now? How does he make sure he's getting paid more? Like, even though he may not want to be the Paul Gallen footballer and convert over, but how do you...
What's the route you take?
I think, initially it has to be, obviously you got to have some fights in Australia, get your name out there, all that sort of stuff, but you have to go overseas. Because no one really cares about anything overseas if you're just an Australian. You'll basically be that guy that goes over with a 15-0 record and, oh my God, how great is he? And gets golden. And is basically the sacrificial lamb. Yeah, no, Brocking's pretty good because he's got Jeff Fennick under his belt and he's doing it the right way. But there are so many people that have had that great record, and I could fight in Australia every week and have a 40-0 record. But no one gives a shit because it's not the same. If you can go overseas and actually perform, at least get your name out there, it's different. So Ebony Bridges is doing the same at the moment. I believe Dempsey McKean's just gone over there and sparred, and he's sparring with Dylan White, and that's awesome. That's the best thing you can do because you get your name out there. And yeah, Ebony Bridges has gone from something like 13,000 followers to like 60,000 followers because they actually give a shit about boxing overseas.
Yeah, it's crazy to see because, like, and funny you bring up the followers as well because there was, and I don't know if you heard of it, Social Gloves, which was a sort of like TikTok versus YouTube boxing competition, and these guys had millions of followers, whether it's over Instagram or YouTube. But I think they only had 300,000 or 400,000 pay-per-view buyers for the whole event. Okay. And it was like, even though they've got followers, they just don't convert in pay-per-view buyers, whereas someone else with 70K but knows how to sell pay-per-view, like, still, it goes both ways as well, which was fascinating.
I truly believe that we're in the day and age, obviously social media is king, and if you can create a circus, that's what people want. I don't think anyone really cares about boxing unless you're a purist. Like, that people watch the Canelo fight, that's fine. But like, how many people, no matter if they were into boxing or not, would have watched the McGregor Mayweather fight? You know what I mean? Exactly. And the guy just shot his mouth off for months and made $100 million. Like, you can't knock him. Like, full credit to the guy. But that was never a boxing match. Like, Mayweather was just toying with him for a few rounds and then knocked him around. Like, it was never going to be a win for McGregor at all, but $100 million is definitely a win.
That's a big win. Well, same as Logan Paul.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. It's not a fight.
No,
it's a show.
No. But people just want the circus, yeah.
Yeah. So when you were getting into boxing, how did you start out your first few fights?
Okay.
As in terms of your approach, obviously you won.
Okay, well, this is how it started for me, right? That basically the first fight was created because I was training once a week with a friend of mine who was a PT and just wanted to learn some more skills. So I was training once a week with him at Luke Pizzudi's gym in Kingsgrove. I think it's Kingsgrove. And he's the guy that ran the CFC. So because I was literally training once a week and that was it. And I said, I want to fight. And he's, no, you shouldn't. All right. And he put me in the ring in a boxing style match with an amateur fighter, Shane Doolman, same sort of height and size as me at the time. And he belted me for 3 rounds. I come out blood everywhere and all the rest of it. So it was an extremely humbling experience thinking that I was the greatest fighter ever. And I really wasn't shit at the time. So again, I trained just the once a week for a few more, I think it was probably about 2 months. And then I convinced him to throw me in. And I won my first MMA fight just by out wrestling the guy on the ground, which is weird because that's not me. Again, just the strength, I think. But then 2 weeks later, I had a kickboxing fight. And a week later, I had a boxing fight. And that's how it all started for me.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. For like, mostly the fact that once a week was enough to get you actually going.
No. Well, I was extremely tired after the first round of the MMA fight. Obviously, the wrestling and stuff. Like I can box 12 rounds, but if I start wrestling someone for 3 minutes, I'm gone. Yes. Yeah, it's a very different cardio. So luckily, I just elbowed the crap out of him for the last sort of minute of it, and they called it off after the first round. So that was good because I probably wouldn't have been any good in the second. But again, it was all part of that. Was my amateur experience basically. I just jumped straight in and said, "Fuck it, let's do it." So luckily, they didn't put me up against like a BJJ expert or something because it would have been stuck.
Yeah, wow. And then, so your first few boxing fights, getting a few wins under your belt, doing a few fights there. 2011, you had a lot of fights.
That was the moment. So 09, I had the one boxing fight. 2010, I had one boxing fight. And then from 2011, I thought, yeah, let's just do boxing. So that's where it all sort of started.
How many times a week are you training at this point?
Back then?
In 2011, yeah.
I was training properly, but I was still working, as everyone does. Because you're only getting, say, $5,000 a fight, all the rest of it, you've still got a full-time job. So I was still working full-time security and everything else. So it was the once a day, probably 5 times a week. And funnily enough, I hooked up with Tama Tahuna and Jamie Tahuna at EFG in Penrith at the time because the guy I fought in the first fight was from that gym, and it was like home of the heavyweights. I was like, yeah, good place to go, you know. So that's where I ended up. So I had a very good training set. It was more of a MMA style first, obviously, just everything in once. But then when I just stuck with the boxing, that was a lot better. So it all revolved just around my right hand because that was my power hand. And it was basically setting things up for my right hand.
And at this point, is anyone in your ear telling you you could make it to the stage? That you could become the champion? Is anyone saying this at this point? Did anyone ever say
Not at all. No, never. No one ever said it. It wasn't until before my Aussie title fight, so that was my 11th fight, my manager, Matt Clark, well, he wasn't then, but he basically was contacting me and said, listen, what will happen is if you can win this fight, I'll get you over to UK in front of Ricky Hatton, and it'll all start from there, you know what I mean? So it was pending on me winning the fight and getting to Ricky Hatton. I then signed with Hatton and Matt Clark, and all went from there. So the best thing I ever did was the whole signing with Ricky Hatton because that opened up all the doors completely. But yeah, it still really wasn't until I was probably, 15-0 that I thought, this could happen. And through their connections and stuff, like people still ask me now, like, do you reckon, are you going for a world title or do you reckon you get a world title? And it's a hell no, because it's all about politics and money. And because I don't have that backing anymore of, say, a Hatton or someone like that, it'll never happen. So like a Brocky Jarvis, for example, he would, just for the fact he's got Jeff Fennick on his side and he's got the connections. So it really is 100% about who you know, not about anything about how you fight.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of things.
It's a strange
like
way
a
to
lot
think
of things
about
in life, yeah.
It is like, yeah.
So you're in the UK. How long is it then? So what year did you move to the UK and start fighting there?
I didn't move. I still stayed in Australia the whole time, but I was going backwards and forwards all the time. Yeah. So for a fight, I stayed there for a month once. So that was also, it was almost quarantine for me because I obviously don't know many people. I didn't have a car. So for 2 weeks, I was basically stuck in a hotel, got picked up, we went to sparring, come back, and I just stayed in the hotel the whole time. So I walked around here to there and to like petrol stations and tried to like see some stuff, but that's also another thing about boxing that may be a little bit of the perception's off, is that like I've been around many places in the world. I haven't really seen much. You know, you're either in fight mode because you've got a fight coming up. So you don't want to go party or any of that sort of stuff. I don't drink anyway, but you're in that fight mode, that zone. And then literally every single fight I've ever had, they fly you back the next day. So you don't get to stay and you don't get to do anything. So I've seen a lot of places, but I've seen nothing at the same time.
Do you wish you had more of an opportunity to see more then? Or you don't care, you're a business?
To stay maybe 1 or 2 days afterwards would have been better because at least the fight's over. Regardless if you win or lose, the fight's over, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. And you can actually just have your me time, basically. in saying that, I do obviously I may go to an amateur fight or I may go to dinner and like I do things, but like it's not like I'm just me. I want to see this. Let's go, stuff like that. So or have your missus with you or just have a normal experience. Yeah,
like a human. Or not. That's
That's
sounds
like
so fucking weird.
like
Like a tourist.
travel. Yeah, you're just purely there on business. Like, can't do
that's
too
correct.
much.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So then the lead up to the Chagev fight, what's that look like?
Again, with boxing, boxing's fun. It really is. It's all about the politics and stuff. So now, I don't know if you know, so I'll just say it anyway. Shigeyev's best mate is the president of the country, right? So for starters, he's the one putting the show on.
This is the
So
story I
I
want
get
to
a
hear.
call. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I get a call saying, okay, he wants to fight someone else first, which was Pinetta. I don't know. I think it's Pinetta. Yeah, he wanted to fight someone else first, so they'll give you 30 grand to step aside and wait until the next opportunity, which was a couple of months down the track. I'm like, well, I like 30 grand. It sounds pretty good. So I just kept training all the rest of it. So the fight kept getting put back, and that's unfortunately the problem with 10 years of boxing. There's no structure. Like all of a sudden the fight's on, the fight's off, there's a different opponent, there's something else, there's something going on. COVID come in and literally just ruined my boxing career towards the end of it. It's killed it completely. But there's always something going wrong. So when I eventually got that opportunity to go to Russia, I was never, ever going to be the person to win. I was that Aussie with a great record who was coming to lose. That was it. So I say
Did you
Russia.
know this? Is this what you believed?
What?
Is that what you believe, that you're the Aussie with the great record going to lose? Or is that what everyone else thinks?
No, 100%. No, exactly. But most, like I'm talking a good 95% of Aussies that go anywhere overseas are that person to go and lose. It's a pure fact. Like if you can actually look at all the stats, you can win. Like I did, I won by knocking him out. It's not saying you can't win, but that's the plan. You're always the opponent. So I went to Chechnya. I saw snow in Russia for the first time, all this sort of stuff. So it was great. Had my sponsors with me, my manager, his father. I had my two brothers. Like it was a great experience to have at the same time for all of us. But yeah, no matter what, we were in Chechnya, which is I think it's like a 99% Muslim country. There was no tattoos, there's no smoking, there was no alcohol. Which is great because it was actually good to see Islam at its finest. Like I grew up in Granville and Sydney and Auburn and all the rest of it. And all the boys are like drugs, drinking, tattoos. It's not Islam. It was actually very nice to see what I grew up with in its purest form. And it's nice. But very war-torn country, very different, all that sort of stuff. So we saw around, went to a shooting range, had guns and all this sort of stuff. So I did see Chechnya, which was actually pretty good, and I got to experience it with my brothers and mates and stuff like that. But as I said, I was never there to win. So by the time I got to the actual fight, okay, I'll tell you a funny story because you'll like this. It was like an open workout. So 2 days before the fight, open workout, and we're doing the stuff. They said, get there at 8 o'clock. So I got there at 8 o'clock. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I'm looking up, and the president is getting his hands wrapped. I'm like, why is he getting his hands wrapped? You know what I mean? So I've gone and sat in the corner and just watched this. And yeah, he seemed like a nice fella. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's an asshole because I didn't speak to him much. But he was basically that much in power that everyone was so scared to do or say anything that if he went, oh, everyone went, oh my God, that was the funniest thing ever. It was just one of those things. So he was doing pads and everyone's clapping like it's like a world champion Canelo doing pads and like the guy that he sparred who was going to fight in the UFC got hit and fell down on the ground and like it was one of those things. So eventually I did my pad session and he was on the ring watching and all that sort of stuff. And then he come in after it and we were standing there and had the interpreter. We were talking backwards and forwards, and beautiful. I got treated like an absolute movie star. Like so, it was a great experience. And then he punched me in the stomach. Like he just whacked in the stomach. Now, I don't know if he was to see what I was like in the stomach or what. I don't know what the fuck he did, to be honest. But I've sort of looked at him. It didn't hurt, but like, hey, what's going on there, you know? And then he just smiled. I'm like, all right, we'll shake hands. Fuck off, you know, like, say hello.
What?
So I had 3 minders, and my minders were all armed and stuff like that, just in case. And I asked what would have happened if I hit him back? He goes, we would have shot you.
Your minders would have shot you.
Yeah, my minders would have shot me for punching the president. I'm like, okay, fair enough. So luckily I didn't retaliate, but yeah. Again, it was definitely an experience. So yeah.
How come you didn't retaliate? It makes sense. Like,
this is the president.
Had enough sense
sitting next to Barack Obama. Barack Obama punched in the stomach. What are you going to do?
Okay, you can punch me.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow.
So the fight comes along, and great. It's a smaller indoors because it was a bit colder outside, so they didn't have it in the outdoor one. They have it in the indoor one. The atmosphere was absolutely amazing. Everyone against me, obviously, but absolutely amazing. Yeah, no expense spared. All this sort of stuff was really good. You look up and there's like the grandstand, but then there was this section in the middle. And that was where the president was. You know, Koshazoo, some other Russian gangster, like all this sort of stuff, and they're all watching as well. So obviously very intimidating from my end. And yeah, the fight went like the fight did. I got knocked down, which was never part of the plan. And I come back and won in the 10th. So if I did not knock him out, I was losing no matter how I fought. I was losing a decision no matter what, you know what I mean? But having Buffer being the person calling me out and all that sort of stuff, well, you can't buy that shit, you know what I mean? So I'm so happy for that. But I looked at Buffer and said, do I get to say, like, thank you? Like, and he goes, nope. I went, oh, okay. So the president got up and just walked out.
Wow.
Like, he had the shits something hard. He had the shits really badly and got up and walked out. I said, let's go. So back into the change rooms we went. Now, we had the testing to do. Now, I paid for the testing, knowing that I'm in Russia, all this sort of stuff, and I'm there to lose and all that sort of stuff. I paid personally for that testing. So why the fuck would I take something when I know they're getting it tested? Because I paid for it myself. You know, it just none of this ever made sense. So again, I was never there to win. So they gave me his belt to hold and take some photos, and they gave it back to him. They said, "Darren, we'll mail it out to you." I'm like, okay, thanks. Yeah, well, you know. So
is this a normal process? The belt is it normal just to get the photos, give it back, get it sent out?
Sometimes, yes. I believe, like, Joshua and Usyk, that's what happened as well. Okay. But I think if it's a vacant title, they have one just for whoever the hell wins. But yeah, like it took me 2 years of going through courts and defending myself, and obviously copying so much backlash on social media and everything else. I finally got the belt back, but by then the damage has already been done. So I still served, I think it was an 8-month ban. I'm still labelled a drug sheet. I went from like finally getting to here and possibly going to here with like a Klitschko. That was actually on the cards, me fighting like a Klitschko. So there's at least say $2-3 million for me. Wow. Back to down here, and I fought Julius Long for $5,000. You know what I mean? So it completely and utterly ruined my career, but also my life. Like it's everything sort of just went to shit. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot to get into there.
I'm sorry.
But going back to your handlers, as a security guard, what's it like having handlers who are armed, and 3 of them? Like, most people never feel like that. You feel pretty good, surely.
I'm not concerned about the guns and all the rest of it. I think it was just more like, for show, because one of them come up to about my boob height. Like, they're all little fellas, you know what I mean? So they weren't big burly fellas, but they did have guns, which made a difference. But they were great. Like they hung out with us, they ate with us. There was like 3 and then 3. So 3 would do a daytime, 3 would do a nighttime. So we got to know them, so to speak. We had a full-time interpreter with us the whole time, so we always had something and we could talk backwards and forwards. They let us hold the guns. It was great, So we're in the hotel room with the guns. So yeah, it was good. It was a good experience, but I'm not concerned about guns at all, to be honest. So yeah, it was pretty good.
Just the thought of, and I watched this video of a guy who just hired bodyguards just for the fun of it to walk around in public and see how everyone would react, and everyone acts like he's a celebrity, like
Mayweather.
Yes, yeah. I mean, he probably overdoes that.
Just a touch, yeah.
like in the situation that you're in, do you need handlers?
Never have in my life. No, and I'm that way. Like, I realise who I am. In Australia, it's a very hit and miss. Sometimes I get stopped. Sometimes people sort of look at me and are still a little bit scared to come up and talk to me, which is, again, that's fine. But it seems like
you got that figure.
I do. It's the piercing blue eyes. That's what it is. But when I go to like UK, for example, I get swarmed. It's great. They really love their boxing, and I walk down the street with Ricky Hatton a few times, and the poor guy can't do a thing. Like, he literally, some guy will just grab him and say, "Yeah, we'll take a photo." Like, it's just, he can't do a thing, So I'm glad I'm not at that point. So I do accept all the stuff I do get. I stood at the front of, it was Dillian White and someone else, I don't know. I was there watching, and they had to move me on inside because one person took a photo. Then it was like, "Who's that guy?" "Oh, shit." And there was a line for people wanting to take photos, and the security guards had to move me on because I was blocking the entrance, So it's a great experience. People say, do you get sick of it or annoyed? I'm like, well, if people didn't want to take photos with me, then I'd be more worried. But at the same token, I also know it's probably going to end at some point, so I'll take it while it's there.
Yes, yeah. Must be.
It's surreal that happens overseas in the UK and like doesn't happen back at home. Like, it's more noticed elsewhere. It's such a weird.
That's Australian media for you, though. Yeah, Australian media does that. They'll put on, obviously, footballers and sportsmen, and the one or two here and there. So, Tim Zoo is probably the main example. Because the Zoo name is so well known, they know he'll eat it up. So he's getting paid great, by the way. He's getting a couple of $100,000 every fight, and these are all like low-level fights where I was getting $3, $4, $5 grand. So he's doing great guns, and he's performing, he's doing it well, and he's using it perfectly. So again, I don't knock anyone for it, but where the fuck was my pie?
Yeah, that's fucking difficult.
The Russians took it from you, essentially.
They certainly did, yeah.
So then walking out to Jimmy Buffer calling your name. Michael Buffer, me.
Yeah. Jimmy Buffer, sure.
You realise that's why I just said Buffer, because I can't remember which one.
Bruce, Michael, whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was unreal. Like, I've since then watched Creed, for example, and the exact same words and tone, and everything they use. The heavyweight championship of the world. And I'm sitting there going, I had that. You know what I mean? No one in Australia can ever say that. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's awesome. And from that point of view, regardless of anything else, even if I did lose, from that point of view, I should be like kept up so high on in Australian boxing, but I'm just not, and it's weird.
Does that piss you off? Do you feel like
it annoys the shit out of me? Yeah. I think I'm very outspoken for starters. So I think I say a lot of things that rub a lot of people the wrong way, but that's who I am. If you don't like it, fuck it. I don't play their little games. Like, I'm not controlled by all these people. So I think that's another reason why I'm not sort of in the little circle, because I'm not a team player.
I think people are starting. I feel like at least myself, like, people start to appreciate that more. Like, I would much rather someone be like purely authentic than just total whatever line they had to get it. It's just so much more.
But would you rather get paid?
I mean, I would like to think that I'd rather be authentic, but I have no idea. I haven't been in a situation where there's been a choice there, but I love the authenticity.
I'm in a situation where I think most people in the UK think I'm a millionaire, you know what I mean? Which obviously isn't the case, but that's what their boxers are like. When it comes to it, I'd rather be authentic 100%. But at the same time, if I'd gone over to like the UK, I'd be driving a Bentley right now, no problems. But then I wouldn't be in Australia, which I love, and I wouldn't be with my kids, and that was the whole purpose of moving to the city of Perth. And yeah, I wouldn't want to miss them growing up just for the fact that I wanted to make some money. I've spent 10 years not working a job. So I've seen the world, I've traveled, I've met people, I talk on social media and help people every day. This is all the good things, by the way. I'm not going to say all the bad things. But, it's not like I've had a bad life for 10 years. I just haven't been paid properly, you know. So I completely love what I've done and what I do and all that sort of stuff. I don't want to be some normal guy in a cubicle. It's just that'll send me nuts. So I have been somewhat exceptional and different, but I just haven't been paid the correct. I'm still renting a house, put it that way. I own my car. I don't have any debts or any of that sort of stuff, but I'm still renting. I haven't even got my own house. Now, for someone who's been boxing 10 years and a full world champion, that's just sad.
Yeah, that's rare.
So, yes, mate.
You'd be pretty pissed off, yeah.
Yeah.
That's tough. It's like, what would you rather? And I mean, it sounds like you're pretty comfortable with the decision of spending time with your kids, and obviously that's very important as well. Yeah. But it's a shame that it doesn't get rewarded here in Australia as if you were to be in the UK, when really we're similar countries.
Is it mainly just the whole post-fight drug scam? Do you think that's the main thing that handicapped that from going any further? Was it just that whole debacle after the Russian? I don't know, obviously.
Well, I had one fight per year, I think it was, for the next like 2 or 3 years. And yeah, those fights would have only been 20 grand, 30 grand, something like that. So like, it's not like I was making any money, you know what I mean? So the money I had saved, like, yeah, the world title was 250 grand. So it's not like I made all this money either. And that was before percentages. So 20% of the promoter, 10% of the manager, 10% of the lawyer, like I took home maybe 170, you know?
And then tax.
So again, it's not, yeah, and then tax, all the rest of it. So I then had to use all that money for the next like 3 years. So again, I'm not struggling, but I haven't made money, so to speak, either. Yeah, Paul Gallen made 1.2 million off my fight and 1.3 million off Hooney fight. That's all I asked for. You know, those 2 fights, I'm retiring. You'd never see me again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how do you reckon it'd be different if, just like most other fights, you get handed the belt and you go on? How do you reckon? Have you thought about what it would have been like with and without the drug scandal?
Yes, but at the same time, like I can't change it, so it's all like a what if, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was actual talks of a Klitschko fight. Now again, that would have been 100%. That would have been me to go to lose. Like, I'm not going to lie with that. Klitschko's the man, all that sort of stuff. He was still performing well, everything else. So that would have been me losing. Alex Leopold, hello. Yeah, he was there to lose. That's all it was. So I would have still, no matter what, I would have still had the chance to win, and by some reason catch him, knock him out, all that sort of stuff. But like, that would have been more of probably a 70-30 split to him of him winning, because he's the man. But still, it would have been something that no one else had done, and I would have got paid for it and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's no point going into something if you're not actually going to test yourself out with the best people.
1,000%, yeah. So where does that put you now? Are you still trying to test yourself?
I'm purely just trying to get paid. You know what I mean? I've done that. I'm over that. I've gotten to that point, and people never gave a shit anyway. So why do I keep trying to please everyone else? So right now, as I said, the next fight is for $5,000. So that'll do nothing. That won't cover the training I've just done. You know, but it's for a WBA Oceania belt. Now, what that does is progress me in the world rankings and all that sort of stuff. Gets my name back out there in terms of a UK or USA fight, more interest, etc. So that's why I'm doing it. Yes, it's $5,000, but the belt's on the line, and that's all that matters.
Okay, so playing it out, a win in 3 weeks on the 12th, the 3rd of December, is it?
Third, yeah.
3rd of December. you go to the UK, US, you win the next fight. Where are you hoping to be?
Again, just money fights. So someone like a Christian Thun is still very keen to fight. So that, for me, that will put my name back on the big stage. What's his name? Alan Babbage wants to fight. Wardley would still want to fight. Like there's because of my name and because I'm a former world champion, people want to use my name and everything else to catapult them forward. So they think, okay, he's 42, he's passed it, especially after the Gallon fight. They look at that as my last performance. Oh, he's shit, he's lost it. They didn't realise, I don't know if you knew this or not, but I got hit in the head, back of the head 5 times and it perforated my eardrum. So I was basically fighting cross-eyed. That's I'd never had that before. And it's not that I got knocked around. Yeah, it's the fact I couldn't fucking see what was going on.
I'd heard about the perforated eardrum, but so what's that do to the vision?
Vision, but balance. Like, so I threw this sort of right hand and it almost fell over. Like, I had no balance at all. So I was getting hit, don't get me wrong, but like I couldn't sort of go bang, bang, bang and hit back. It was just bang, hey, and I was all over the place. So it looked like I was getting basically knocked out. But I had zero balance altogether. So he won the fight, don't get me wrong. And the fact that he was the cash cow for the whole event, that's why they didn't pull him up for hitting me in the back of the head 5 times.
For sure. Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah.
But
Aussie boxing.
Yeah.
We need it for the next one. We need to keep using him. So
that's tough.
That's right. Yeah.
How passionate are you about boxing? Because like at the moment we've spoken to like so many boxers, but also like athletes like leading up to the Olympics, and some of them like love the sport that they've picked. Another one of them, and it's a girl, female cyclist. She didn't give a fuck what sport, but in high school she had to find a sport to go and pro in. She's a good cyclist. Like, which category would you put yourself in?
Because I've had so much, I suppose that negativity would be the best word. I don't care about boxing. I don't even watch boxing. I don't watch boxing at all. If I watch any fighting, it'll be UFC. Just because it's different. It's the 3 rounds. It's somewhat shorter. All that sort of stuff. There's more hype. They do it better. It's a better show. I actually don't watch boxing. I watched Fury and Wilder the other day because that's something of my interest. But people say, "Oh, have you watched this?" I said, "Who's he? Like, what weight class?" They go, "Middleweight." I said, "No, I'd never watch that." You know, so if I do watch boxing, which is very rare, it's a massive fight of a heavyweight card. Otherwise, I don't really care. So I think I've checked out of boxing many years ago. But it's still technically, I use it as a job. This is my job. It keeps me happy. It keeps me fit. It keeps me punching people in the face because I like to do. So it's my job, and I like my job, but I don't like boxing at all. No.
I love that answer because it's so untypical. Yeah.
It's perfect. It's like perfect balance. Like, you don't care about everything else going on with boxing. Just it's good for you at the moment, so it's good.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Well, again, I don't want to go back working on doors or in a cubicle or this, that, and the other. So my whole plan at the moment is to have a few more fights, make some money, and start my own gym. So it won't be, and this is I want to make this very clear, it won't be a boxing gym where I train fighters and stuff, because I want nothing to do with boxing once I'm finished. It's a boxing fitness. So like an F45 sort of thing where people will come in and it's fitness, and no matter how old you are, age, size, whatever it is, but it'll just be more of a boxing orientated one. So have a box master, but it'll still have all the assault bikes, you do footwork drills and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
12-round fitness type.
Pretty much, almost 100% the same. Yeah, but Big Daddy boxing. Yeah.
I like to know. Boxing fitness is one of those ones that is meant to be like all round incredible. I grew up playing football, and like they would take us to boxing training just to freaking get you working muscles you never work. It is the best overall.
It's different, yeah. It's just totally different. And as I said, I could box 12 rounds, but if I start wrestling, I'm gone, you know. So it is just something different, and you test yourself out. I truly believe that everyone should have some sort of fight in their life. Now, whether it be a sparring or a white collar or amateurs or pros, but it really tests you out in terms of how far you can push yourself but your heart, because some people just don't have the heart for it, and some people don't have the mental capacity to handle it either. So it really does sort of show you who you are. People always ask me, do I put my kids in boxing? Like, am I pushing them in? And like, I actually don't want them to fight. If they want to, 100% I'm supportive, but I want them to learn how to fight and use it for fitness. If they're walking down the street with their girlfriend or their mum, at least they can handle themselves, because let's face it, people are assholes, especially when it comes to alcohol and all the rest of it. So at least they can handle themselves. That's all that matters. So as long as they're happy, that's good. I'll never push them into boxing ever.
Yeah. Do you consider like the health ramifications, like continue to fighting, and then is that like part of the reason you don't want your kids to do it?
It does really depend on how much you get hit. Like, let's be honest. So some people use their face as a shield, and it's not good. But some people, like a Mark Hunt, like the guy's just got a head like a brick. You know what I mean? I've hit it a few times as hard as I could. He just smiled at me. Like, it's weird.
Weird.
But it is. It's like, fuck. And he just smiled and went bang. So, but like some people, like I think it's Amir Khan, like he just doesn't have a chin. So you shouldn't be boxing continuously if you don't have a chin. So if you do have the aspects for it, that's fine. But again, I would say, like, get in, make some money, do whatever, and then get out. You know, so I've started very late, and yeah, I can still talk, as you can tell. Like, I'm still quite articulate and all that sort of stuff. I'm very intelligent, just not book smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as long as I still have those faculties, that's all that matters to me. Yeah. So if I start slurring my words, or obviously getting injured in some way, well, then I'll give it up no matter what. And it's never happened that way, so I'm good.
How have you then changed your training or structured your training as you've been getting older? Has it changed in any way?
No running. I don't like running. Or my calves don't like running, that's for sure. So, yeah, people say you're a big boy, your knees and your hips and stuff like that. It's never been an issue. But my calves just cramp up like you would not believe. So I do, my assault bike is my best friend, which is the greatest and the worst all in one go.
I fucking hate it.
It's shocking, but it's good, yeah. So I try and do sprints if I can. I do little sprints and stuff. I ride a bike a lot. Assault bike's the best. You got that ski erg that I'm always on. But yeah, the best way to train for boxing is to box. So your bag work, your sparring, all that sort of stuff, that's always the best way.
How's that on joints? Is there anything bad that happens on your joints? It's perfectly fine.
Absolutely not. Like I've got hands like stones. Like they really are good. I did a little bit of kung fu when I was younger, and they do some hand conditioning and stuff like that. And like I've punched many dumb shit, brick walls and trees and stuff when you're an angry young teenager. And but like I've got hands like bricks. You know what I mean? They're great.
I think they're a little bit smaller than mine.
Just a bit, you know what I mean? So I think from a boxing point of view, you probably get more hand issues than anything. But I don't have any hand issues, so it's more the face. Like I'm worried that my nose is getting fat. So I had a nice nose, and I'm worried that it's getting fat. So I've got the sparring headgear with the knee. So my nose is good. I cut like a bitch. I really do. Like I cut like that. You look at me weird, and I'll cut. So. But I do heal like Wolverine. Like I'll have the Cormier fight. He hit me with an elbow, and I got 13 stitches across my eyebrow. I fought a week and a half later. So that's 13 stitches to fighting a week and a half later. So yeah, I heal like Wolverine, but I cut like a bitch.
Were you healed like in a week and a half?
Technically, I was.
Oh,
so I made sure it didn't get hit again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got cut probably 2 weeks ago. I got cut because I used a different headgear. The one that I had with the nose bar, it broke off, and I was ordering a new one. So I put my old headguard on, which is like the face is open, and it pushed up against the actual headgear, and it I had a little cut. Next day I was healed. So like obviously I didn't spar for another week just to make sure, because I don't want to fuck anything up for the fight. But yeah, I've been sparring ever since, and it's all good. So yeah,
that's awesome. And in terms of preparation for a fight, heavyweight you don't need to cut, you don't need to make weight. Are you leaning out? How do you go with that? Because middleweight or something like that is very different, I guess.
Yeah. I do when it's like prep. So just say 3 months out, I'll be doing a lot more weights and like power stuff and things like that. But when it gets closer to fight, like now, I want to not cut weight, so to speak, but I do want to be lighter. Like, running around the ring at 115 and running around the ring at 125 are very different things, you know. And I say 10 kilos because I'm a heavyweight, and that's exactly the numbers that we use. You know, like you see a middleweight go off about a kilo, and he's a kilo heavier. Like, who gives a shit? I fought someone who was 40 kilos heavier. Like, yeah. So I walk around at probably 122 on a normal day. At the moment, this morning, I woke up at 117. So it basically means a little bit less weight and a lot more cardio. That's pretty much it. So, yeah, watch the food. Don't eat too much Maccas, which I love, by the way. And yeah, just sort of make sure the portions are in good size. So I eat well. I eat the youth foods meals. I get it delivered. So as long as I eat 3 of those meals a day.
Do you eat? They're fucking tiny.
Well, they're the new ones. No, the new ones that have just come out are the bigger ones, and they're the high protein ones. They're called Fueled, I think. Fueled, but yeah, they're slightly bigger. So with the smaller ones, I eat 4 a day. With those ones, I eat 3. And that's it. So it's not that I eat shit. It's just that I eat way too much. So instead of having a sandwich, I'd have a loaf of bread. You know what I mean? So, yeah, so as long as I know the portions are good, I'm good. And as I said, 117 this morning, so I'm extremely happy with where it's going.
That's awesome. Is there anything else you've got coming up or you're working on other than your fight in 3 weeks?
No, I've got a puppy.
Fuck yeah.
No, I was in a 10-year relationship. She was my fiance, all that sort of stuff. And I think it's 14 or 15 weeks now that we've been split up. So obviously that's a major impact on life and everything else. I was in a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house by myself by the end of it. So I had to move. So I've moved closer to my kids. I've got my own new spot. All that sort of stuff was good. But like I'm sitting on the lounge sort of by myself going, yeah, I'm definitely a Nigel. You know what I mean? Like I've pushed so many people out and I've put myself in a bubble due to the world champion debacle and the drugs and this and that and just the assholes that are on social media. So I have thousands of friends, but I don't have any great mates, you know, and if I did, they'd be in Sydney because I grew up with them sort of thing. So it's also a very hard spot. I hang with my kids, I train, and I thought I need something else. So I got a puppy. So the puppy basically, a new mate, you know, the affection, the attention, obviously mentally I've got to sort of keep on to it because, yeah, it pisses shit all over the place and you got to look after it. And yeah, so it's like having a child again almost, you know. So it stopped me from overthinking everything. I think that's my major concern. I overthink everything. So it stopped me from doing that. And I'm in an extremely good, happy place at the moment. So, 3 weeks out, that's the worst thing that an opponent could hear. Yeah, because a happy fighter is a good fighter, you know what I mean? So I'm on fire at the moment. It's good.
That's awesome.
The power of a puppy. You need a puppy.
It is, mate.
You need to look after your dog.
I don't think I can take care of it. I'll be so bad. We've loved having you on the show. We put up a little poll on Instagram before we did this, and we've selected one question from Joel. He just wanted to know, and we call the section Overtime segment. What was it like walking into the ring in Russia? This is from Joel.
It was awesome. It started off slightly scary because what they had, we came out on the second level and we had to stand on a platform. So imagine that, but obviously like that. That was our platform. And me and the coach had to stand on that as it sort of come down. And it had no barriers or anything like that. So if we fell off, we fell off. So we're sort of, okay, the song's on, let's get in the mode. Shit, don't fall. Like, it's just, yeah. So it was very like that at first. And then being the opponent, I was the first one out. So I went in the ring, did my thing. No one cheered because everyone was against me. And we had to wait for him to come in. Everyone cheered, all that sort of stuff. But by the time Buffer, don't say Michael because I have no idea. By the time Buffer started speaking and introducing, I'm like, we're here. You know what I mean? So I think that was more of the moment that it all started sinking in. And it's not until I touch gloves with someone that I really sort of come on, because I don't want to expel any excess energy that I don't need to. So it's not until we touch gloves and we go back to the corner, I'm like, okay, we're in a fight. You know what I mean? So you sort of just take it all in. You just look around and this is great. And look what I'm doing. I'm getting called out by Buffer. Like it's very surreal, but it's extremely humbling at the same time. I go through so many emotions and none of them are anger, which is really weird. Like I was an angry child. And once I started fighting, I never went into the ring. I never have been in the ring angry at all, ever. Which is, for me, that's quite weird because if I had to fight in the street, I'd lose my shit.
Why is that? How are you able to reach such a calm place?
Okay, my first fight ever, which was the MMA fight, I fell asleep in the change room on a lounge. Like I didn't care. Just
so relaxed.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think at some point that fight in particular, I had to get punched in the face for me to actually go, shit, we're in a fight. Like I was that calm, relaxed. Because I'd also done security for 13 years, knives, guns, bottles, chairs, gangs, like it's a very calming experience to just have one guy to fight. And if you do knock him out, people cheer. They don't go, "Oh, you're a dickhead! You know, why'd you do that?" So it's a great experience. And I think all boxers have something wrong with them anyway. Don't take it wrong, but you have to have something. You got to have something wrong with you to want to get in and do that. But I would have been like a gladiator. That no matter where I was in time, I'd be one of those people, and that's just who I am, and I'm happy with it.
It's awesome.
That's fucking sick.
That answered the question, yeah, sorry.
You nailed the question.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for coming onto the show, Lucas. It's been really awesome talking to you. For people who want to get in contact with you or follow you, it's Lucas Big Daddy Brown on Instagram.
That's correct. We got the tick.
Got the tick, yeah, the blue tick. Love that. Anywhere else they can find you?
I'm on Facebook. But basically, what happened? I got hacked. Hacked and barred and banned, and Facebook's great, by the way. Thank you, Facebook. Since the Paul Gallen fight, I've had to create a new page. So I've got a Lucas Brown page that I'm using now, but I've also got the old one that's still technically up there. I just can't get into it. So 15 years of memories, I can't access it, which is quite frustrating. You know, so I've created a new Facebook page, but Lucas Brown on Facebook also, yeah. I'm on TikTok, I think. I just use that for some stuff. And I'm on Snapchat, so I don't know. Whatever you want. Instagram is the best one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been great to talk to you.
Appreciate it, boys. Thank you.